Every morning, I walked those quiet streets, delivering papers, never suspecting danger could hide behind a smile. At 13, my world was simple school friends, and my paper route a job I loved for the freedom it gave me. The neighborhood was familiar, filled with friendly faces who left granola bars or tips at Christmas. But then Gerald and Louise moved in their house, a tidy anomaly at the end of Maple Lane. And something about them turned my routine into a creeping dread that still lingers in my bones. My paper route took me through a sleepy suburb, the kind where lawns were neat and porch lights glowed at dawn. I'd start at 5 a.m. on Sundays, the air crisp, my sneakers damp with dew. My bike's basket held the papers there, weight a comforting routine as I pedaled past familiar houses. The job was mine for a year, and I knew every customer, the old man who waved from his porch, the lady who left cookies by her mailbox. When the snowbirds returned, Gerald and Louise appeared their house pristine with white shutters and a garden bursting with roses. They seemed nice at first, waving as I tossed their paper, but their warmth felt off like a mask that didn't quite fit. It was a Sunday, the sky still dark when I first met Gerald. I was in my usual thrown-together outfit, polar bear pajama pants, and a faded Britney Spears shirt. Not exactly a fashion statement. I tossed their paper, aiming for the porch, when Gerald stepped out. His gray hair neatly combed, his smile too wide for 5:30 a.m. "You dress cute," he said, his voice syrupy, his eyes lingering too long. I froze, my cheeks burning, unsure why his compliment felt like a violation. I mumbled a thanks and pedaled off the morning air, suddenly colder, his words clinging to me like damp cloth. I told myself it was nothing, just an old man being friendly, but my stomach twisted a warning I couldn't name. The next week, I noticed their garden more closely. Among the roses were 3 small stones, each engraved with the name Picto, followed by dates years apart. They were dog graves. I realized all 4 Shelties, all named the same. I frowned, tossing their paper, my eyes on those stones. Why name every dog Picto? It wasn't just odd, it was unsettling, like a ritual I didn't understand. I mentioned it to my mom, expecting her to laugh, but she just shrugged. "People grieve in their own way," she said, her tone dismissive. "Don't judge." But the graves stayed in my mind, their identical names, a puzzle that felt wrong. Gerald's compliments grew frequent, each one sharper, more invasive. "Such a pretty shirt," he'd say, standing closer, his breath faintly sour. Your hair looks nice today, all wavy and wild. I'd nod, forcing a smile, my bike a barrier between us. Louise was always there too, her smile tight, her eyes watching me like I was a specimen. "Come inside for tea," she'd say, her voice soft but insistent, her hands clasped too tightly. I'd decline citing more papers to deliver, but her smile never wavered, and that made it worse. It was as if she knew I'd say no, but kept asking, testing me. The invitations came every week, their voices a strange duet, Gerald's overly warm, Louise's eerily calm. Just for a minute, Gerald would press his hand, brushing my shoulder one morning, his touch lingering like a stain. I pulled away, my heart racing, and pedaled off his voice, calling after me. "You should respect your elders, you know." The words weren't loud, but they carried a weight, a threat wrapped in politeness. I didn't tell my mom, not then. Our relationship was good, and I was afraid she'd think I was paranoid, overreacting to a creepy old man. But I started avoiding their house, tossing their paper from the street, my eyes on the road. The final encounter came on my last Sunday on the route. I'd decided to quit the job, no longer worth the unease Gerald and Louise stirred in me. It was early, the sky a bruised purple, the air thick with humidity. I wore my usual pajamas, my hair a mess, and as I approached their house, Gerald was there, standing on the porch, his silhouette sharp against the dawn. You're early," he said, his smile too wide, his eyes glinting. "Come inside, just this once." Louise made tea. I shook my head, my throat tight. "My mom's strict," I lied, my voice unsteady. "She'd be mad if I'm late." His smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "Wouldn't your mom want you to respect your elders?" he said, stepping closer, his hand reaching out. I backed away, my bike wobbling, and blurted, "My dog's sick. I gotta go." I pedaled hard, my heart pounding, his voice trailing after me. "Your hair's so pretty today," he called, his tone mocking now. I didn't look back, didn't stop, until I reached the next house, my breath ragged, my hands shaking. Louise was out the next day, her smile as fixed as ever, inviting me in to play with Peach Toe, their new Sheltie. I declined her disappointment, palpable, and never went back. I quit the route soon after, the joy of it gone, replaced by a fear I couldn't shake. Those graves haunted me, their identical names, a question I didn't want answered. Were they really dumb? Or something else? Gerald's touch, Louise's smile, they felt like a lure, a trap I'd narrowly escaped. I never told my mom the full story, scared she'd dismiss it, but I couldn't forget. The neighborhood felt different after that, its quiet streets hiding something darker. Years before, my cousin had a paper route too, in a town not far from ours. She told me once, her voice low, about a house she avoided, a place where the couple always watched her, their eyes too eager, their invitations too persistent. She'd found a small stone in their yard, carved with a strange symbol, and the next day, their dog was gone, replaced by another, with the same name. She quit, never went back, and warned me to trust my gut. I'd laughed then, young and fearless, but now I understood. Was it the same kind of people, or something else, wearing their faces? I don't walk Maple Lane anymore. I don't know if Gerald and Louise are still there, if Pechto's grave has a twin now. But every time I pass a house with 2 perfect roses, every time I see a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, I'm back on that porch. Gerald's hand on my shoulder, Louise's voice calling me inside. They're still out there, waiting for someone to say yes. The buzz of my phone felt like a spark of hope, his texts lighting up the screen with charm and wit, promising a night I'd never forget. I was a junior at a small, prestigious university, surrounded by ivy-covered walls and ambitious dreamers, but lonely enough to try a dating app. He seemed perfect, funny sweet, vouched for by 2 friends who knew him from class. He's a good guy, they said, their smiles reassuring, and I believed them. We planned a picnic at 6 p.m., a romantic evening under the stars. But when he texted to push it to 8, I didn't think much of it. By 8:30, his car pulled up, and I climbed in, my heart fluttering with nerves and excitement. He drove me to his apartment, not a park, and though my instincts prickled, I followed him inside, trusting the boy my friends had praised. But as the door closed behind me, the single candle flickering in the dark felt like a warning, its light too weak to hide the danger lurking in his eyes. The apartment was a cavern of shadows, its multiple bedrooms stretching into unseen corners, the silence heavy with secrets. A single candle burned on a low table, its flame trembling, casting jagged shapes across bare walls. A faint glow from a floor lamp did little to pierce the gloom, its light swallowed by the vast emptiness of the space. He lived alone, he said, in this oversized place, and the thought sent a chill down my spine. Why so much space for one person? We sat on a worn couch, a makeshift dining area with takeout containers spread before us, the scent of soy sauce and grease mingling with the waxen tang of the candle. He was nervous, his hands fidgeting, his laughter forced nothing like the easy charm of his texts. I tried to keep the conversation light, talking about classes, music, anything to fill the uneasy quiet. But his eyes kept darting to the corners, as if expecting someone or something to appear. The candle's flame wavered, and I felt the room shrink, the walls pressing closer with every passing minute. Then he changed his voice, dropping to a low, deliberate tone. "Let's talk about something real," he said, his gaze locking onto mine, intense, unblinking. "What's your deepest, darkest secret? Ever thought about killing someone?" My breath caught my fork, pausing mid-air, the food turning to ash in my mouth. I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "No, never," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted. He leaned back, his smile crooked, and launched into a story about being in the Navy, about bombing a ship and killing 5 people. The words spilled out casually, like he was recounting a weekend trip. But his eyes gleamed with something darker, something that made my skin crawl. I didn't know how to respond, my mind racing to process the absurdity, the danger. "Just kidding," he said, waving it off. But the laugh that followed was hollow, his gaze sliding to the floor. Then quieter, he added, "But I've thought about it. My ex's new boyfriend. I could kill him." My heart stopped, the air turning cold, the candle's flame flickering, as if it felt the shift too. I needed to leave, but my body wouldn't move. The room felt smaller now, the shadows deeper, his words hanging like a noose. I mumbled something about needing to get back, my voice shaking, and he nodded too quickly, his calm unnerving. "One more thing," he said, standing, his movements slow, deliberate. He crossed the room to a closet, its door half hidden in the dark, and my pulse spiked as he reached inside. When he turned, he held a rifle, its barrel glinting in the candlelight, pointed loosely in my direction. I froze, my breath trapped, my eyes locked on the weapon. "Got it for hunting," he said, his voice eerily calm, his lips curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But I can't even kill an animal." The lie was palpable, his grip on the rifle too steady, his gaze too focused. I stood, my legs trembling, and forced a smile, my voice barely audible. "Cool, but I really need to go." He lowered the rifle, his smile widening, and agreed to drive me back, the car ride a blur of silence and dread. I escaped, but the fear stayed. He dropped me at my friend's place, the city lights a frail comfort against the memory of that rifle, that smile. I told my friends, their faces paling, as I recounted the night, their shock mirroring my own. Something was off. I said the words inadequate for the chill that still gripped me. Was he joking? Testing me? Or was there something darker? Something sinister? waiting to surface. I see that candle in my dreams, its flame flickering, his eyes watching, and I wonder what might have happened if I'd stayed a moment longer, if I'd seen what else he hid in that dark apartment. The ocean's murmur was my lullaby, but at 12:30 a.m., it turned to menace. I was parked in my car, my home for years, on a quiet coastal lot, the stars hidden by clouds. A pickup truck loomed nearby, its tinted windows hiding eyes I could feel watching me. Then they moved two men, drunk and angry, their voices sharp with suspicion. One flashed something in his hand, a glint that could have been a gun, and told me, "No more sleeping here." I was alone, exposed, and the night had just become my enemy. I'm no stranger to living in my car. For 5 years, I'd made it work a nomad's life of freedom and necessity. My spot was a small beachside lot on the southbound side of a coastal road where cars and RVs lined up, some homeless, like me others, just there for the view of the bay. By day, it was lively with music and laughter, but at night, it was ours, the outcasts, who called it home. I'd park under a tree for shade, my routine honed, grab my blanket, lock the doors, and sleep until noon. The sun's heat, my only alarm. The lot was safe, or so I thought, until that night changed everything. It was past midnight, the air cool with a salty tang, the ocean's rhythm steady through my cracked window. I'd been struggling to sleep, my mind restless, so I pulled into a new spot on the northbound side, a secluded area with a few trees and a hiking trail nearby. The lot was nearly empty, save for a large 4x4 pickup truck 20 feet away, a dog leashed outside, and 2 other cars at the edges. I figured it was fine, plenty of space, no trouble. I parked under a second tree, close enough to see the pickup's outline, but far enough to feel private. In hindsight, that was my first mistake. I stepped out to relieve myself in the woods, my flashlight cutting through the dark, the ground soft with pine needles. The pickup's radio played faintly, a Spanish song I didn't recognize, and I avoided looking at its occupants, keeping my head down. Back at my car, I grabbed my pillow and blanket from the trunk, settling into the back seat. The night felt heavier now, the ocean's hum drowned by an unease I couldn't shake. 5 minutes later, the pickup's engine roared tires, crunching as it sped up the road. I relaxed, thinking they'd left, but then headlights swung back the truck, making a sharp U-turn, and creeping toward me, slow and deliberate, parking inches from my driver's side. My heart thudded, a warning, pulsing in my veins. The passenger window rolled down, revealing a man with bloodshot eyes, pupils wide, his voice slurred but sharp. "Eres policia?" he demanded, leaning out his body, tense with aggression. I forced calm, raising my hands to show my pillow. "No, man. I'm just sleeping here." His gaze didn't soften, his hand fidgeting behind the door, gripping something that caught the moonlight. A gun, maybe? Or a knife? I couldn't tell, but the threat was clear. "No policia, come here," I said, mimicking sleep, with my head on my hands, desperate to de-escalate. He pressed harder, asking where I was, from his tone accusing, as if my presence was an insult. I apologized, my voice steady, despite the fear coiling in my gut. "I'm just here for the shade," I said, pointing to the tree. But he shook his head, muttering, "Polizia, come here." His anger grew, his words slurring into a rant. And then he did it, lifted his hand just enough to show a metallic glint, a subtle threat that froze my blood. "After today, no more sleeping here," he said, repeating it twice, his chest puffed out, eyes boring into mine. Okay, he added, his voice mocking, as the driver floored the gas, the truck peeling out the passenger, glaring back his stare, a blade in the dark. I sat there, gripping my steering wheel, my breath shallow, waiting 10 minutes to ensure they were gone. The lot was silent again, but the safety I'd felt was shattered. I drove to a Walmart parking lot, safer under its harsh lights, and tried to sleep, but my mind replayed the glint, the voice, the threat. I didn't get their license plate, too dark, too fast, and I knew reporting it could backfire. They'd seen my car, my face. The next day, I dwelled on it, wondering why they'd snapped. Was it territorial? My car too close to their turf? Or something darker? A plan interrupted by my calm. I'd lived in my car for years without incident. But that night, the road felt like a trap, the ocean a witness to my vulnerability. Now, I avoid that lot, parking farther down the coast, always checking my mirrors. The freedom of this life feels tainted, the night no longer a friend. I wonder who they were, drunks, dealers, or worse. The glint in his hand haunts me, a reminder of how close I came to something I can't name. I keep a knife now, tucked under my seat, but it's little comfort. The coastal breeze carries their voices, sometimes a warning to stay away, to keep moving, to never trust the dark. Every shadow in my rearview mirror, every headlight in the distance, feels like them waiting to finish what they started. The forest didn't just surround us. It watched its shadows, alive with something ancient, and hungry. Early spring found me at Adana, a remote stretch along the McLeod River, where the canyon walls cradled a pristine opal blue current. I'd come with my friend Tom and his wife Sarah to fly fish, our tents pitched on the ruins of a 19th century summer camp, its crumbling foundations whispering of wealthier days. The solitude was why we came, but that solitude turned predator, and what I encountered in those woods still stalks my dreams. Adana was a hidden gem, 14 miles from the nearest town, half the journey, a jolting dirt road through a canyon. The campground sat by the river, framed by an old orchard and scattered relics, chimney stones, orchard stumps, a forgotten history of San Francisco's elite. The river was too wild for fishing. That season, swollen with snowmelt, its roar a constant companion. Our first day was quiet, the air sharp with pine and damp earth, our boots crunching over gravel. Tom and Sarah napped in their camper. By noon, exhausted from the drive, leaving me to wander my fishing rod in hand, seeking a calmer bend in the river. I followed a faint trail upstream, past the orchard's gnarled trees, their branches heavy with budding fruit. The forest thickened its canopy, dimming the sun, the air cooler, heavier, as if the woods held their breath. I cast my line at a narrow bend, the water churning, but the fish ignored my bait. A light rain began misting my jacket, and I decided to head back, my boots sinking into the soft earth. The trail led me through a dense arch of vegetation, a natural tunnel where the light barely reached. And that's when I felt it, a prickling on my neck, like eyes boring into me from the shadows. I stopped, my heart quickening, scanning the undergrowth. The rain pattered softly, the river's roar distant, but another sound cut through a deep, guttural huff, like a horse exhaling sharply just above my head. It was close, no more than 10 feet away, hidden in the thick foliage. My breath caught my hand tightening on my rod. I peered into the green, expecting a bear or elk, but saw nothing, just leaves trembling in the breeze. The sound didn't repeat, but the air grew colder, my skin crawling with a certainty I couldn't explain. "You're not alone," my mind whispered, and I moved faster, my steps careful but urgent. The orchard opened before me, its open space a relief, but the feeling of being watched didn't fade. I kept my eyes on the path, my fishing rod, now a useless weight, my sidearm buried in my pack. A mistake I cursed myself for. I slowed, scanning the dense blackberry thickets to my right, their thorns a natural barrier. Nothing moved, but the silence was wrong too heavy, like the forest was holding its tongue. I reached for my pack, my fingers fumbling for the holster, when the huff came again, louder, closer, from the same thicket. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I bolted my boots, pounding the earth, the orchard blurring past. I reached the campground, gasping my chest tight, and spilled the story to Tom and Sarah. They listened, their faces pale, but we stayed unwilling to let fear drive us out. That night, as we cooked over the fire, a deer appeared, its eyes glinting in the firelight. It didn't flee, didn't graze. It stood at the edge of our camp, trembling, then crept closer, settling under our picnic table. By bedtime, it was under Tom's camper, curled tight, its breath shallow. Deer don't do that, not unless something worse is out there. And the thought chilled me more than the night air. Morning brought no answers. We returned to the orchard, my sidearm now on my hip, Tom's rifle slung over his shoulder. The trail was unchanged. No tracks, no broken branches, but the air felt different, charged like a storm waiting to break. We searched the blackberry thickets, finding no path, no sign of what I'd heard. Then I saw it, a young pine, 12 feet tall. Its top snapped clean. At 7 feet, the broken crown laid across the path I'd taken. It hadn't been there yesterday, I was sure. The break was too high, too clean. No bear could have done it, no wind. My stomach twisted, my eyes darting to the trees, half expecting to see something watching. We left that day, the campground fading in my rear view, but the memory clung to me sharp and cold. I've racked my brain for answers, a bear, a mountain lion, a prank, but nothing fits. The huff was too deep, too close. The deer too desperate, the tree too deliberate. I think of my grandfather's stories told by campfire when I was a kid. He'd hunted in these mountains, his voice low, as he spoke of a night he'd felt followed, heard a breath like a bellows in the dark. He'd found a tree snapped like ours, too high for any animal, and never hunted there again. I thought it was just a tale, but now I wonder, was it the same thing, a shadow that roams these woods, older than the ruins we camped on? I haven't gone back to Adina. The river still calls its blue waters, vivid in my dreams. But so does that sound, that breath, waiting in the trees. It's out there, and it knows I heard it. Every rustle in the dark, every snap of a branch brings me back to that orchard. Running, knowing something was just behind me, its breath hot on my neck. The forest trail stretched before us, a ribbon of earth, winding through ancient trees, promising a peaceful escape from the world's noise. It was a crisp afternoon, the sun filtering through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on our path. My family, my brother, my sister, our newborn niece, cradled in her mother's arms, and our friend, a childhood companion, had come to this trail near his father's house for a simple outing, a chance to breathe fresh air and reconnect. I knew this path well, having walked it countless times, its curves and clearings as familiar as my own heartbeat. But as we ventured deeper, the birds fell silent. The air grew heavy, and a group of strangers in flowing white robes surged from the trees, their presence a jolt that turned our walk into a desperate flight for safety. We'd been laughing our voices, mingling with the rustle of leaves, the baby's soft coos, a gentle counterpoint to our chatter. My brother pushed the stroller, my sister adjusted the blanket over her daughter, and our friend trailed behind, snapping photos of the towering oaks. The trail was quiet, save for our footsteps, the kind of solitude that felt like a gift. Then a murmur broke the stillness, a low hum growing louder, like a swarm approaching. From a bend ahead, a group appeared, 20 people, maybe more, their white robes glowing unnaturally in the dappled light. They moved in unison, their faces obscured by hoods, their steps eerily synchronized. My sister glanced at me, her brow furrowing, but we said nothing, dismissing it as odd but harmless. They passed us, their robes brushing the undergrowth, their hum fading as they disappeared down the trail. We continued the baby's coos, grounding us, but a prickle of unease lingered, a whisper that something wasn't right. They didn't leave. The trail curved upward, the trees thickening, and I noticed the hum returning, closer, insistent. I turned my heart, lurching, as the white-robed group reappeared no longer ahead, but behind us, their steps faster, their formation tighter. They weren't passing, they were following, their hooded faces turned toward us, their hum now a chant low and rhythmic, vibrating in my chest. They're coming back. My brother hissed, his voice tight, his hands gripping the stroller. My sister clutched her baby closer, her eyes wide, searching mine for answers I didn't have. Our friend slowed his camera, forgotten his face, paling as the group closed the distance. I'd walked this trail for years, knew every twist, every clearing, but now it felt alien, a trap closing around us. The baby whimpered, sensing our fear, and I felt a surge of panic, my pulse hammering as the chant grew louder, their steps relentless. We had to hide. The trail offered no escape, its open path exposing us to their intent unclear, but menacing. I spotted a faint track to the right, barely a path choked with ferns and brambles, leading into a dense thicket. This way, I whispered my voice, barely audible, and we veered off the stroller's wheels, catching on roots, my sister stumbling as she cradled her child. We pushed through the undergrowth, thorns snagging our clothes, the forest swallowing us in its green embrace. We crouched behind a cluster of pines, the baby hushed against her mother's chest, our breaths ragged, our eyes fixed on the main trail. The white-robed group passed their chant, unbroken their robes, a ghostly blur through the trees. My heart pounded, my hands trembling, as I strained to hear their movements, praying they'd continue on. They didn't. A rustle above us on a higher path snapped my focus upward. 4 figures, their white robes stark against the foliage, moved parallel to the trail, their steps deliberate, their voices low questioning. "Where are they?" One said the words, faint but clear, slicing through the forest's hum. My blood ran cold. They were cutting us off, their path converging with ours, a calculated move to trap us. My brother's hand gripped my arm, his eyes wide, his breath shallow. Our friend pressed against a tree, his face ashen, his camera dangling uselessly. My sister rocked her baby, her lips moving in a silent prayer, her eyes glistening with fear. We waited, frozen the forest, holding its breath with us as the main group's chant faded, their footsteps receding. The 4 above lingered, their voices, a murmur, then moved on their robes, vanishing into the trees. We stayed still, hearts racing, until the silence returned heavy but safe. We fled, retracing our steps, the trail now a lifeline. The stroller rattled, the baby whimpered, but we moved quickly, our eyes darting to every shadow, every rustle. The forest, once a friend, felt like a predator, its depths hiding eyes we couldn't see. We reached the trailhead, the open field beyond a beacon of safety, and piled into the car, our breaths still uneven, our hands shaking. The drive back was silent, the baby's soft cries, the only sound as we grappled with what had happened. Were we overthinking it? Our fear conjuring threats where none existed? Or had we escaped something darker? A group whose white robes and chants hid intentions we couldn't fathom, their synchronized steps, their sudden pursuit, their attempt to cut us off. It felt like a hunt, and we were the prey. I still see those robes in my dreams, hear that chant, and wonder what they wanted, what we narrowly escaped. The Miami night pulsed with heat, but as I stood on that sidewalk, a chill sank into my bones. I was 28, fresh off a grinder hookup, my phone buzzing with a new match. A guy who looked perfect. His photo promising fun. He pulled up in a gray truck, his face matching the profile. But something was off. His smile was too sharp, his eyes too empty, and the air inside his cab reeked of iron like blood. I climbed in, heart racing, not knowing I'd just stepped into a trap that could have been my last. I was 28, on a Miami vacation with my friend, now my boyfriend, a chance to blow off steam after a grueling year. Miami was alive, its neon lights and sultry air a siren call for adventure. We'd spent days on the beach, nights in clubs, but that evening I craved something different. My friend was back at our hotel, exhausted, so I opened Grindr, the app, a familiar thrill. I'd used it before quick hookups with no strings, and Miami's scene promised excitement. I matched with a guy, let's call him Alex, whose profile showed a chiseled jaw, blonde hair, and a grin that sparked heat in my chest. We chatted for an hour, his texts flirty but sharp, and he invited me to his place a mile down the road. He offered to pick me up, a rare courtesy, and I agreed, standing on a quiet sidewalk at 11 p.m., the city's pulse fading into the distance. The street was empty, the humid air clinging to my skin, the scent of salt and asphalt thick. I was buzzed, not just from drinks, but from Adderall, a reckless edge sharpening my senses. I scrolled Grindr, already eyeing another match. A hotter guy, let's call him Jake, whose messages were bolder, his address nearby. I was debating an Uber when a gray Chevy Silverado pulled up its engine, a low growl. The driver leaned out his face, matching Alex's photo, blonde hair catching the street light. "Hey, I'm here," he said, his voice smooth but clipped, his smile a touch too wide. I hesitated, something in his eyes, flat, almost lifeless, setting my nerves alight, but I brushed it off. He looked right, and I was high on the night's thrill. I climbed in the door, heavy the cab's air cool, but stale, tinged with a metallic tang I couldn't place, like licking a coin. The moment I sat, dread coiled in my gut. The cais was too clean. No clutter, no personal touch, just a faint sheen of dirt on the dashboard. Alex's hands gripped the wheel. Knuckles, pale, his smile fixed as he pulled onto the road. I glanced at my phone, still open to Jake's chat, and noticed something chilling. The distance to Jake's location was growing, not shrinking. My heart skipped. This wasn't Alex. Or if it was, he wasn't taking me where he'd promised. I looked at him again. His profile a perfect match for the photo, but the vibe was wrong, like a mask stretched over something darker. Panic surged, but I forced calm, my years of quick hookups teaching me to play it cool. "Love your blonde hair," I said, my voice. Light fingers typing a frantic text to my friend. "This gray truck's cool." "Is it?" "A 2014 Chevy Silverado." I rambled, tossing out details, hoping to make him think I'd shared his identity. "Just told my friends about you gotta be back by midnight. They're waiting at the hotel." Lies, all of it. But my voice stayed steady, my eyes flicking to his hands. One rested on the gear shift, the other in his lap, fidgeting with something I couldn't see. The iron smell grew stronger, clogging my throat, and I fought the urge to gag. He nodded, saying nothing, his smile unchanging, a predator's patience in his silence. I kept talking, a stream of nonsense music, the beach my friends' plans, anything to fill the void, to keep him from acting. The city lights blurred past, but we were veering into darker streets, away from the neon glow. My phone's map showed us heading west, nowhere near Alex's address or Jake's. Fear clawed at me, every instinct screaming I was in danger. I leaned closer, forcing a laugh. "Hey, you want to swing by my hotel? My friends would love to meet you." His head turned eyes, locking with mine. And for a moment, I saw it. Nothing. A void where a person should be. "Nah," he said, his voice low, almost amused. Not feeling it anymore, he slowed, pulling over near a shadowed lot, the engine idling like a threat. My hand was on the door, ready to bolt, but he just stared, that smile gone, his face blank. "Get out," he said, and I didn't wait, leaping onto the pavement, my pulse a roar in my ears. He peeled away taillights, vanishing, leaving me alone in the dark. I called an Uber, shaking, and made it back to the hotel, collapsing beside my friend. I didn't tell her, then the fear too raw, but I locked the door, checked it twice, and didn't sleep. The iron smell clung to me, a ghost of that cab. Days later, I pieced it together. He wasn't Alex or Jake. He'd seen my profile, my location an easy target on a reckless night. I'd talked my way out, my lies about friends, and details enough to make him doubt. But what if I hadn't? The news is littered with stories. Grinder hookups gone wrong. Bodies found in alleys. I stopped using the app. The thrill soured by that night's brush with death. Miami's magic is gone for me. Its streets, a maze of shadows hiding predators. I see his face in crowds that blank stare, and wonder how close I came to being a statistic, a name forgotten in the city's heat. Every notification, every stranger's glance feels like him, his truck idling somewhere, waiting for me to step back into the dark. The silence of that Venice hotel wasn't peaceful. It was a trap luring me into a sound that broke my world apart. Last year, I wandered the canals of Venice, a first-time traveler, drunk on the city's beauty, its labyrinthine streets and shimmering waters. My friends and I scattered across different hotels due to poor planning, chose quaint, family-run places to soak in the charm. Mine was a small villa near the train station, a religious haven with a chapel and crosses adorning every wall. It felt safe, sacred, until the third night, when a sound not of this world tore through my room, and I learned what true fear feels like. The hotel was a relic, its stone walls polished by centuries, its floors creaking under threadbare rugs. My single room on the second floor overlooked a narrow canal, the water lapping softly at night. A simple bed with a wooden cross above it, a basin, and a wardrobe made up my sanctuary, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and incense. The family who ran it, devout and warm, enforced a midnight curfew, locking the doors to keep the world at bay. I loved the place, its quiet intimacy, a contrast to Venice's bustle, and slept deeply the first 2 nights, lulled by the city's gentle hum. But the third night was different. I tossed in bed, the sheets clinging to my skin, the air thick despite the open window. A neighbor's phone blared videos, the sound seeping through the thin walls, grating on my nerves. By 1 a.m., I'd had enough and banged on the wall, my knuckles sharp against the plaster. The noise stopped, the room falling silent. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the cross above my bed, its shadow stark in the moonlight, a restlessness I couldn't shake settling in my chest. "You're just tired," I told myself, but the air felt charged like a storm waiting to break. I drifted off, only to wake hours later, my heart pounding, the clock glowing 3:47 a.m. The room was still the canal outside, silent, but a sound pierced the quiet, a wail low and mournful, echoing from somewhere in the hotel. It wasn't human, not quite its pitch, too deep, too raw, like a chorus of grief trapped in stone. I sat up, my breath shallow, my eyes darting to the door. The sound came from the hallway, or perhaps the stairs below, rising and falling in waves, each crest sharper, more desperate. I clutched the sheets, my mind racing. The curfew meant no one could be out there. No guests, no staff, no drunks stumbling in from the streets. The wail grew louder, filling the room, its vibrations humming in my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Pipes, wind a prank, but it was wrong too. Alive, too full of pain. My skin prickled, a cold sweat breaking out as I stared at the door, its brass knob glinting in the dark. The sound wasn't just sound. It was a presence pressing against the walls, seeping into my bones. I wanted to move, to check the hall, but my body refused, frozen by a fear I'd never known. Stay still, my mind commanded, as if movement would summon it closer. Then, impossibly, the wail shifted. It was no longer in the hall. It was here at the foot of my bed, sharp and close, as if a dozen voices cried out inches from my feet. My heart stopped, my vision blurring, the room spinning in a haze of terror. The air was thick, suffocating the wail now, a scream, raw and endless, tearing at my mind. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, my body collapsing under the weight of it. Darkness swallowed me, and I felt my consciousness slipping away. The wail, the last thing I knew. I woke on the floor, the morning light harsh through the window, my body aching, my throat dry. The clock read 7, so 3 a.m. The room unchanged, the cross still above the bed. I scrambled to my feet, my pulse racing, checking the door locked, untouched. The hall was empty, the hotel stirring with the soft clatter of breakfast below. I packed my bag, my hands shaking, and left without a word. The villa's warmth now a lie. My friends noticed my silence, but I couldn't tell them, not then. The wail was too real, too raw, a wound I wasn't ready to expose. Back home, I tried to forget, to chalk it up to exhaustion, a nightmare born of travel. But the sound followed me, echoing in quiet moments, waking me at night. I researched the hotel, digging through forums, old reviews, anything to explain it. Nothing. No hauntings, no tragedies, just praise for its charm. But Venice is old, its stones soaked in history, and I wondered, what had that villa been before? What pain had it held? The wail wasn't random. It was a memory, a cry trapped in time, and I'd heard it, felt it, in a way I couldn't unlearn. My aunt once told me a story when I was young about a house she'd stayed in as a girl. She'd woken to a sound like sobbing, not human, coming from the walls. It grew closer each night until it was in her room, a pressure that made her faint. Her grandmother said it was the house's grief, a family lost to plague, their cries lingering in the wood. I'd laughed, called it folklore, but now I understood. Was the wail in Venice the same a remnant of some forgotten sorrow bound to that room? I haven't returned to Venice, haven't slept soundly since. Every quiet night, every shadow in my room brings me back to that bed, the wail rising, the air closing in. It's still there, waiting for the next guest to listen. I was a skeptic once, but not anymore. The wail changed me, and I know deep in my bones it wasn't just a sound. It was alive, and it saw me. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in my bedroom, turned office casting harsh shadows across the walls as the clock ticked past 2 a.m. I lived alone in a rough neighborhood where the distant wail of sirens and the occasional shout were just background noise, easily ignored as I typed furiously to meet a deadline. My room was my sanctuary, a cramped space cluttered with books, coffee mugs, and papers. Its familiarity, a shield against the chaos outside. But tonight, the air felt different, thick, with an unease I couldn't shake, as if the darkness beyond my window was watching, waiting. Then a faint cry pierced the night, a woman's voice, desperate, pleading for help. I paused my fingers, hovering over the keyboard, but dismissed it as a drunk stumbling home. Moments later, a voice whispered in my ear, clear and cold, "I know you can hear me," and my world shattered. The cry had come from down the street, a wail that faded into the night's hum, blending with the distant rumble of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. I lived in a part of town where trouble wasn't uncommon. Fights, parties, the kind of chaos that comes with cheap rent and thin walls. I told myself it was nothing, just another night in a neighborhood that never slept, and turned back to my work, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat on the screen. My room was a mess, papers strewn across the desk, a half-empty coffee mug teetering on the edge. But it was mine, a space I'd carved out for focus, for escape. I'd been burning the midnight oil for weeks, the freelance writing gig demanding more than I had to give. But the deadline loomed, and I pushed through the fatigue, my eyes burning, my mind fogged. The cry lingered in my thoughts, a nagging echo, but I shook it off, typing faster, willing the words to flow. The room was warm, the radiator humming softly, but a chill crept over me, raising the hairs on my neck, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Then it spoke. The voice was sudden, impossibly clear, as if someone stood just behind my chair, their breath grazing my ear. "I know you can hear me," it said, a woman's voice, low and deliberate, each word a needle piercing my calm. My heart lurched, and I shot up my chair, toppling with a thud that echoed in the silence. I spun around, my eyes darting to every corner, every shadow, expecting to see her. A figure, a face, something to explain the voice that had felt so real. The room was empty, the laptop's glow casting my silhouette against the wall, my reflection pale and wide-eyed in the monitor's reflection. My pulse hammered my chest tight as I stood frozen, the words looping in my mind. "I know you can hear me." How could it be so clear, so close when I was alone? I live by myself, the door locked, the windows shut tight against the night's dangers. I checked the closet, its door creaking open to reveal nothing but clothes and clutter. I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to peer into the street below. Empty, save for the flicker of a street lamp and the distant glow of a neighbor's porch. Nothing was there, but the voice wasn't gone. I searched the house, my footsteps heavy on the hardwood, checking every room, every corner. The living room was still the kitchen, silent the bathroom's fluorescent light, stark and unforgiving. I even stepped outside, the night air cold against my skin. The street deserted. No sign of a woman, no trace of anyone who could have spoken. Back inside, I locked the door, my hands trembling, and sank onto the couch, the laptop forgotten its screen, now dark. The voice had been real, not a dream, not a hallucination. I'd been awake, focused the words, as clear as my own thoughts. My heart still raced, my breath shallow, as I replayed the moment, the way the voice seemed to know me, to see through my dismissal of the earlier cry. Was it the same woman? Her plea for help now? A demand for attention? I tried to rationalize it. Exhaustion, stress, the neighborhood's chaos, playing tricks. But none of it explained the clarity, the intimacy of those words. The night stretched on, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I stayed up, curled on the couch, a blanket pulled tight around me. The room's warmth doing nothing to ease the chill in my bones. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the window sent my pulse spiking, my eyes darting to the shadows. I kept the lights on their harsh glow, a frail defense against the darkness that seemed to press closer, as if it could speak again at any moment. I tried to calm myself, scrolling through my phone, sipping cold coffee. But the voice lingered, its words etched into my mind, a taunt that refused to fade. I'd never experienced anything like this, a moment so vivid, so undeniable that it shattered my sense of safety. My room, my haven, felt violated, its wall, no longer a barrier, but a cage holding me with the echo of that voice. The fear hasn't left me. I went back to work the next day, the routine a fragile anchor, but the room feels different now. Its corners darker, its silence heavier. I avoid working late, the memory of that voice keeping me on edge, my eyes flicking to the window, expecting to hear it again. Was it a spirit, a warning, or something my tired mind conjured? I don't know, but I feel it, watching, waiting for me to listen again, and I'm not sure I can ever feel safe in that room, knowing it knows I can hear it. The air in Chorton House turned to ice as the heavy oak door swung open on its own, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. I was alone upstairs, my sister's shift at the cafe below, the evening stillness shattered by that impossible movement. My hands froze on the till, my breath catching as the machine began to pulse, buttons pressing themselves in a frantic dance. This wasn't a prank, not a breeze. This was the house, alive and angry, and it wanted me to know I wasn't welcome. I was 22, working part-time at the cafe in Chorton House, a grade 2 listed manor in Hampshire, UK, a place steeped in history and shadow. My sister, 2 years older, had landed us the gig, a chance to earn extra cash while studying. The house was a relic over 300 years old, its stone walls adorned with portraits of stern lords and ladies, its floors polished to a mirror sheen. By day, it was charming tourists sipping tea under chandeliers. But at night, it changed silent, vast, and watchful. We worked late shifts for events, weddings, or private dinners. The cafe open until the last guest left. That night, it was just us, the event winding down the manor's grandeur, a hollow shell in the dark. Chorton House had a reputation. Locals whispered about Lady Eleanor, a former resident said to roam the upper floors, her presence marked by cold spots and fleeting shadows. My sister hated the paranormal, dismissing the tales as tourist bait, but I'd felt the house's weight, its corridors too long, its silence too deep. We were closing up the cafe's tables, cleared the air, heavy with the scent of coffee and wax polish. My sister was downstairs restocking, while I manned the till upstairs, a sleek machine tucked behind a mahogany counter. The room was dim lit by a single lamp, the windows reflecting my pale face against the night beyond. It started with the door. The main entrance to the cafe was a massive oak slab, key-coded for security, its weight requiring a firm push to open. I was counting receipts when it moved, swinging inward with a slow, deliberate grace, as if someone had entered. I froze, expecting a late guest, but the doorway was empty, a black void swallowing the hall's light. My pulse quickened, the air growing colder, a chill that sank into my bones. I called out, "Hello," my voice trembling, but silence answered thick and oppressive. I stepped toward the door, my sneakers silent on the wood, and pushed it shut, the lock engaging with a reassuring click. I told myself it was a draft, though the windows were sealed the night still. Back at the till, I tried to focus, my fingers fumbling with coins. Then it happened. The machine jolted, its screen flickering buttons, depressing in a chaotic rhythm. Numbers flashed receipts, spat out the display, a jumble of nonsense. I pressed the power button, yanked the plug, but it didn't stop, as if possessed by a will of its own. My heart hammered a scream lodged in my throat. I backed away, the counter digging into my spine, my eyes darting to the door. It was closed, locked, but the room felt alive. The shadows shifting in corners, the portrait's eyes seeming to follow me. I whispered my sister's name, a plea, but she was too far below to hear. The manor's history flooded my mind, tales of Lady Eleanor, who'd died in grief, her spirit tied to these walls. Staff had stories, glasses falling, footsteps in empty halls, a woman's silhouette in the library. I'd laughed them off, but now alone they felt real. My sister had warned me about late shifts, her fear of the dark, a quiet confession. I'd teased her, but now I understood Chorton House wasn't just old. It was awake, its past a living thing that resented our presence. I grabbed my phone, texting her, but the signal was dead. The screen's glow, a frail shield against the dark. The lamp flickered its light, dimming, and I felt it, a presence, not seen, but known, pressing against me like a weight. I bolted for the stairs, my feet pounding the cafe's warmth, a distant memory. I found my sister in the kitchen, her face pale, and gasped out what happened. She didn't scoff, just grabbed her jacket, her eyes wide with fear. We fled to the manager's office, a small room by the courtyard, and told her everything. She nodded, unsurprised, and said, "That's Lady Eleanor. She likes the upper floor." Her calm chilled me more than the door, as if this was routine, a price for working here. We stepped outside the courtyard's old lamps, casting a sickly glow. Then they dimmed all at once, their light pulsing like a heartbeat before flaring back. My sister's face crumpled, her resolve breaking. "I'm done," she said, ripping off her apron and tossing it to the manager. She grabbed my hand, pulling me down the long driveway, the manor's silhouette looming behind us. The gravel crunched underfoot, the night air cold and sharp, but I kept glancing back, expecting a figure in the windows, a pale face watching us go. We reached her car, parked under a street lamp, and drove away. The house fading in the rear view, but its presence clung to us a shadow we couldn't shake. I never went back. My sister quit that night, and I followed the cafe's tips, not worth the terror. We still talk about it, the door, the till, the lights, each memory, a splinter in our minds. Was it Lady Eleanor? Her grief turned to malice? Or something older, woven into Chorton's stones, disturbed by our intrusion? The house stands, its doors locked, its secrets kept. But I know it's waiting, its halls alive with whispers of the past, ready for the next soul to cross its threshold. Every flicker of a light, every door left ajar, pulls me back to Chorton House, where the dark remembers my name. The darkness in my bedroom wasn't just night. It was a veil hiding something that stared back with human eyes. My home was a quiet haven, a modest 2-story house where I lived with my mother. Our lives, a rhythm of shared dinners and late-night talks. My room, a small sanctuary across from hers, was my refuge filled with books and soft blankets. But one night, the safety of that room shattered when a face appeared. Its gaze locked on my door and a shadow followed, leaving me to question what haunts our home. Our house was unremarkable, its beige walls and creaky stairs a backdrop to our simple life. My bedroom faced the hallway, a narrow passage leading to my mother's room, its door always open to catch the breeze. I'd grown used to the house's quirks, the hum of the heater, the faint drip of the bathroom faucet. But lately, a strangeness had settled in a feeling I couldn't name. It wasn't loud, wasn't obvious, just a prickle on my skin when I was alone, a sense that the air held more than it should. I ignored it, blaming late nights and too many horror movies. But that night, ignoring it wasn't an option. I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day, the moonlight streaming through my window, casting silver patterns on the floor. My room was cool, the open window letting in the scent of damp grass. The world outside silent save for the occasional rustle of leaves. I curled up my body heavy and drifted into a restless sleep, the kind where dreams blur with reality. Sometime past midnight, I woke my heart racing, though I didn't know why. The clock glowed 2:43 a.m. The room bathed in a pale, unnatural light, the moonlight brighter than it should have been. I lay still, my eyes adjusting, and that's when I saw it. A face hovering opposite my bed near the window. It was a man, young, perhaps 20. His features sharp and gaunt, his cheeks hollow, his hair a fiery red, curled tightly atop his head. His eyes were wide, frozen in a look of pure terror, locked on my bedroom door, as if something unspeakable stood just beyond it. He didn't move, didn't blink. His presence so still, it felt like a painting, yet so real. I could trace every line of his fear. My breath caught my body rigid, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin. "Don't move!" My mind screamed, as if stirring would break whatever held him there. The face was vivid, its details etched in my mind. Pale skin, almost translucent. The faint freckles across his nose, the way his lips parted slightly, as if caught mid-gasp. He wasn't looking at me, didn't seem to know I was there. His gaze fixed on the door, unyielding. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest. The room too small, too quiet. The moonlight, now a harsh spotlight on his terror. I wanted to scream, to run, but my limbs were lead, my voice trapped in my throat. I stared, unable to look away, the face a magnet for my fear, its expression a mirror of my own. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time warped in that moment, stretching into eternity. My heart pounded my pulse, a drum in my ears. And then I felt it, a shift, a ripple in the air, as if something else had entered the room. My eyes darted to the door, half expecting it to open, but it stayed shut the hallway beyond dark. Yet there in the shadows, a form appeared, faint and shimmering, like a silhouette drawn in light. It was human-shaped, but wrong. Its edges blurred its presence, a glow that didn't belong. It stood motionless, watching the doorway, or perhaps watching him, the man whose face still hovered by my window. The silhouette was translucent, its outline pulsing softly, like a heartbeat caught in mist. It didn't move, didn't speak, but its presence was a weight, a violation of my space. My stomach churned, a sick dread rising, as I realized it wasn't just there. It was aware, its stillness, deliberate, as if waiting for me to acknowledge it. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would vanish. But when I opened them, it was closer, just inside the doorway, its glow casting eerie patterns on the walls. The face by the window remained its terror unchanged, and I wondered, were they connected, or was I caught in their silent war? I don't know how long I lay there, my body frozen, my mind screaming. The fear was primal, a raw instinct, that told me to stay still, to hide, as if movement would draw their attention. The room was a prison, the moonlight a cruel witness, the air so thick I could barely breathe. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The face faded, dissolving into the light, the silhouette vanishing, the air lightening, the room mine again. I gasped, my chest heaving, and sat up, my eyes darting to the window, the door, the hallway. Nothing. Just my room, my bed, the quiet night. I didn't sleep again. Not that night. I sat against the headboard, the blanket pulled tight, watching the door until dawn. The moonlight softened the world, waking, but the fear stayed a cold knot in my chest. I told my mother the next morning, my voice trembling, expecting her to dismiss it as a dream. She listened, her face pale, but shook her head. "I don't know," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "This house, sometimes I feel things too." Her words were a confession, a crack in the normalcy we'd built, and I realized I wasn't alone in my unease. I started digging, searching for answers, but our house was ordinary. No dark history I could find. Yet the feeling persisted, a shadow in the corners, a weight in the air. I kept my door closed at night, my light on, but sleep was elusive. My mind replaying that face, that silhouette, their silent vigil. I wondered, who was he, the man with the red hair? What had he seen at my door, and the silhouette glowing, waiting? What did it want? The questions were a loop, a torment, with no end. My grandmother's stories came back to me. Tales she'd told when I was small, her voice low by the fire. She'd lived in an old house as a girl, where she'd seen a woman's face in her mirror, eyes wide with fear, staring at something behind her. The woman never moved, never spoke, but appeared some nights, always watching. My grandmother's father said it was a ghost, a girl lost to fever, her fear trapped in the house. I'd giggled, called it silly, but now I understood. Was the man in my room the same? A soul caught in terror? His gaze, a warning I couldn't heed. I still live here, still sleep in that room, but it's not the same. Every night I check the door, the window, my eyes lingering on the shadows, waiting for that face to return. It's still here somewhere, watching. I don't know what it is, but I know it saw me, and I know it's not done. The moonlight, the quiet, the air, they're all different now, tainted by a fear that won't let go. The night air hung heavy, a suffocating blanket over my 5 acres of North Carolina land as I leashed my German shepherd for our nightly ritual. The woods that bordered my property loomed dark and silent, their dense canopy swallowing the starlight. But I'd walked this path countless times, my flashlight cutting through the shadows, my dog's steady presence, a comfort. Tonight, though something felt wrong, a prickle on my neck, a sense of being watched that settled deep in my bones before I even stepped outside. My dog, a 5-year-old rescue with sharp instincts, sensed it too, his ears twitching, his gaze fixed on the trees. As we ventured into the yard, the silence was absolute. The usual chorus of crickets and owls gone replaced by a stillness that screamed danger. Then in the heart of the woods, 2 glowing eyes appeared unblinking, and I knew we weren't alone. The land was my refuge. 5 sprawling acres of rolling fields and thick forest, a slice of wilderness just outside a quiet North Carolina town. I'd bought it years ago, drawn to its solitude, its distance from the chaos of city life. My dog, a loyal companion with a coat of black and tan, was my partner in exploring it, his nightly trips to the yard, a routine we both cherished. I always went with him, not just for his safety, but for mine. The woods were home to coyotes, bears, and other wildlife that could turn a casual walk into a fight for survival. Tonight, though, the danger felt different. Not animal, but something else. Something that made the air feel thick, oppressive, like a storm about to break. Inside the house, I'd already been on edge. The lights flickering the radio, cutting to static for no reason. My dog paced his ears up his body, tense, staring at the back door, as if he could see through it to the woods beyond. I grabbed the flashlight, its beam a frail weapon, and stepped into the night, his leash tight in my hand. The woods were watching. We moved across the yard, the grass damp under my boots, the flashlight sweeping in arcs, catching the glint of dew and the gnarled roots of ancient oaks. My dog was alert, his nose twitching his steps, deliberate, as if tracking a scent I couldn't detect. He stopped near the tree line, his ears swiveling, his gaze locked on the darkness where the forest began. I followed his line of sight, my heart thudding, and saw them, 2 glowing eyes suspended 3 to 3.5 feet off the ground, burning like twin embers in the void. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, their light unnatural, too steady for any creature I knew. My dog tensed, a low rumble rising in his throat, his leash taut as he pulled toward the woods. I gripped it harder, my flashlight aimed directly at the eyes, expecting to see a raccoon, a fox, something familiar. But the beam revealed nothing. No fur, no shape, just those eyes, unyielding, locked on us. I tried to scare it off. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking, echoing through the trees. The eyes didn't flinch. I yelled again, louder, stomping my foot, hoping noise would break whatever spell held them. Nothing. No rustle of leaves, no snap of twigs, just silence, heavy and absolute. My dog strained against the leash, his body rigid, his focus unwavering, as if drawn to the eyes, wanting to confront them. I pulled him back, my arm aching, my breath shallow. "Come on," I muttered, my voice barely audible, fear creeping into my chest. I took a step backward, then another, my eyes never leaving the glowing points, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Then they moved, not a leap or a scuttle, but a smooth, fluid glide, closer, silent as if the forest itself was carrying them. My heart pounded, my mind racing. "Deer don't move like that. Coyotes make noise. Nothing natural stays so still under light." I yanked the leash harder, dragging my dog toward the house, his resistance fading, as if he sensed the danger too. We reached safety, but it didn't feel safe. I slammed the door, locking it, my hands trembling as I pressed my back against the wood, my dog still staring out the window, his body tense, his eyes fixed on the woods. My chest heaved, my pulse a drum beat in my ears as I peered through the glass, expecting those eyes to reappear closer at the edge of the yard. The night was black, the flashlight, now useless, on the counter, its beam too weak to pierce the forest's heart. My dog stayed by the window, his posture rigid, a guardian against something I couldn't see. I didn't sleep that night, pacing the living room. The house's familiar creaks, now threats, every shadow a potential intruder. I kept the lights, on their glow a frail shield, and watched the woods, waiting for movement, for those eyes to return. They didn't, but the fear lingered, a weight that settled in my chest, refusing to lift. The woods held secrets. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the encounter. My nightly walks with the dog, now fraught with tension. My flashlight sweeping the trees, my ears straining for silence. I started noticing things, piles of bones, small and brittle, scattered in the undergrowth, not there before. On one tree, I found markings, deep gashes, carved into the bark, too precise for claws, too sharp for weather. The land backed onto territory once held by a Native American tribe, and I'd heard whispers of strange happenings, Lights in the woods, voices on the wind, stories dismissed as folklore. I'm not superstitious, but those eyes, that movement, the bones, the marks, they didn't add up. Was it a creature, a spirit, something tied to the land's history? I haven't seen the eyes again, but I feel them watching from the trees, waiting for me to step too close. The message popped up on my phone, a friendly invite from an old university pal, but the words felt wrong, like a trap dressed in nostalgia. I was 23, living in a friend's house, unaware that a shadow from our past was watching. His name was Tom, my friend's sister's ex, a man whose charm hid a darkness that grew sharper with time. He'd vanished after their breakup, but now he was back, his digital whispers pulling me toward a house party that wasn't what it seemed, a setup, a slaughter waiting to happen. I was 23, a university student, crashing at my friend's family home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a temporary haven while I juggled classes and a part-time job. The house was warm, filled with the laughter of my friend, his sister, Anna, their parents, and the hum of daily life. 2 weeks into my stay, Anna's boyfriend, Tom, moved in a decision that shifted the air. At first, he was magnetic tall, with a quick smile and stories that held us captive over late-night drinks in the garden. We'd pass a cigarette, trading tales of life and dreams, his charisma, a glue that bound us. But beneath the surface, cracks formed a darkness that seeped out like ink. Tom's charm faded fall. He ranted about government conspiracies. His voice edged with paranoia, claiming he was always the victim. He was obsessed with Sigma male nonsense, spouting martial arts bravado, his temper a spark, ready to ignite. He kept a massive dog, a snarling beast caged in the garage, its eyes wild with hunger. One day, it attacked Anna, its jaws snapping at her arm, and had to be put down. Tom's guilt trips began his words, twisting her pain into blame, his rants a relentless tide. The house grew tense, the warmth replaced by a brittle unease, his presence a storm cloud we couldn't escape. 2 months later, the parents had enough. They demanded he leave. But Tom had a plan, bizarre, reckless. He rented a shipping container in a storage yard on the town's outskirts, a rusted metal box he called home, dragging Anna with him. It wasn't a cozy conversion, just a bare, cold shell among stacks of crates, the air thick with oil and decay. He terrorized the yard staff, his threats so fierce they called the police, who dismissed it as another of his conspiracies. Anna's life unraveled his abuse, escalating verbal. At first, then physical, his hands leaving marks she hid under long sleeves. I played a dangerous game, staying close to Tom, pretending friendship to protect Anna, my heart pounding with every lie. Her family intervened, pulling her out a rescue that left Tom raging. He blamed me, accusing me of poisoning her. Against him, his texts a flood of venom. Anna found a new partner, her smile returning, but Tom's shadow lingered. We blocked him on every platform, hoping distance would erase him, but he was a ghost, untraceable, yet ever present. A year passed, the house regaining its warmth, but I felt eyes on me, sometimes a prickle on my neck in empty rooms. I brushed it off, chalking it up to stress until the messages started. They came from random accounts, some friendly, others hostile, a digital assault. I couldn't escape. I blocked each one, my unease growing until a profile caught my eye. A name I knew. A university friend inviting me to a house party. The texts were warm, nostalgic, promising a free house with old mates. I booked time off, made travel plans, excitement dulling my caution. But something nagged a detail in the address, a street name that felt familiar. I mentioned it to Anna. Her interest piqued until I read the location. Her face drained of color. "That's Tom's dad's place," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's for sale." My blood ran cold. The property, a sprawling house on the town's edge, was empty, its sale pending. I realized then the friend's account was fake. Tom's hand behind every word, luring me to a trap. I waited until the party's date, my nerves frayed, and called the police, claiming a break-in at the address. They found 5 people inside, including Tom, and a butcher's van parked out front, its back loaded with knives, hammers, and rope. The air left my lungs, the reality hitting like a fist. He'd planned to kill me, maybe others, a twisted revenge for losing Anna. I never went near that house, never saw Tom again. He vanished after the police raid, his accounts silent. But I know he's out there, his rage a ticking bomb. The family home feels tainted, now its safety a fragile lie. I check my locks, avoid social media, and see his face in every stranger's glance. Was he always this monster? His charm a mask for madness? Or did losing Anna break him, turning love to hate? I'll never know, but I live with the weight of that night, the knowledge that I walked to the edge of death and stepped back, but not without scars. Every ping of my phone, every shadow at my window feels like Tom, his knives still sharp, his plan unfinished.